All right. I think we're live. Good evening, guys. This is me, Suze Pratt, the holistic stylist, for the first time trying to do a live broadcast. So, I had hoped by this time I would know a little more about the process, but I think I'm going to just jump right in and talk to you guys about why I'm doing this. So, believe it or not, 1 year ago, I came online and I had never been on the computer before in my whole life of my own choosing. A lot of people thought I was just maybe not educated enough, but I did have 4 years of solid business training in high school, and then I've run my own business now for 32 years. So I know how to type, and the whole story with this is that it started with a phenomena. And so for those of you who know me, and I'm really very unsure of how to work with Google, so hopefully this will help me. But um, it's been a little difficult, say, to understand how this stuff works and to sound educated when I'm talking about it. But it's all been learned via telepathy. So I've done as best as I can to document that over this last year. And so this would be the beginning of my second year. And on September 1st, which I mean, we're 24 hours away from, come on, that's when the phenomena happened. So when I say that, I had been on the computer just typing. And then all of a sudden, this wave came in through the computer. And so people that work a lot with the computer do know this is a reality. And let's face it, even Mark Zuckerberg told everybody, y'all are learning through telepathy and you're all linked up. And of course, that terrifies people because they believe that means that everybody is going to be able to be in their head and reading their minds. And that's not exactly how this works. But I will say this. When that phenomena happened that I'm getting ready to describe, it was amazing because so many people came through this website and I had absolutely no footprint on Facebook. And I met them between the hours of midnight and 12:40 on September 1st. And after that, I watched a long series of instructionals and YouTube feeds that were put there for me to watch. So it was pretty wild because my man, Joe, I think you can see him in that picture right there. He kind of looks like Jesus in the Zigzag Man. Joe was sitting right next to me, but of course he didn't experience the same thing I experienced. But when I saw this phenomena, it took me by such great emotion. My hands were up in the air, praising God, tears were rolling down my eyes, and I was typing in the Universal Peace Covenant, which, I mean, really sounds like a bunch of crap. You know, it sounds like I'd be a liar when you're talking about social media because so many people get on for the small things. But when I was recruited online to speak to people, I was told that every word that I typed would be searched. And I also knew that this artificial intelligence not only reads intention, it reads all vital statistics. And you want to talk about your lover or your kid knowing what you're doing. Talk about the ultimate creator of the universe knowing what you're doing. So, really, I'm an open book, and everything I'm going to discuss in this hour is completely honest, and I stand by it. So, if anybody's out there, I sure do hope you enjoy this, and I sure do wish I knew how to communicate with you. It says up here I could learn about how to moderate the broadcast. by controlling the guest microphone and camera, but I have absolutely no clue how to do that. So let's go back to this time between 12:40 in the morning and 10:30 in the morning. I was sitting completely upright, eyes open, fully comprehending what was going on, and watching the most incredible things. So, over this last year, you see, all of those things have been proven to be true and valid. Which, what I mean by that is if I saw it on the morning of September 1st, you see, through my YouTube excursion this last year, here would be these things that I would either vibe to or they would be right there at my feet. Now, sometimes when I talk about this, people say, wow, how scary. And it's like, no, not really. Because if I always knew that I stayed off the computer for a reason, and then someone tells me that if my intent is true, that everything's fine and I'm doing my job, and I come on and experience this incredible peace movement and coming together of the most incredible people in the world, stepping out and having the courage to communicate and save whatever it is that's left inside of mankind, that they can grasp this concept and step out of the flippin' matrix. That's all I'm saying, guys. So if my whole life people told me that I was completely crazy for knowing that the spirit world is real and that there is so much more than meets the eye, and then I come onto this social media and all these incredibly intelligent people are confirming this, and I'm having a first-hand experience. Wow, what a trip. So when I started on Facebook and my friends came out of the woodwork, if I didn't take their posts seriously, could I have been that person, say in high school, when they were in a moment of crisis, that didn't take the time or listen or to help or really be their friend? And I knew that I had been these people's friends. And being in my own business, my clients are my friends too. So I do take friendship maybe a little more serious than some people would expect, But that's all about livelihood and whatever you're doing in your career or how you're servicing mankind or your family or your community or whatever it is, that your intent is pure and it's loving. So the evening and morning that I experienced all these things, I met the people behind Heart Math Institute. Now, they didn't announce themselves as such, but of course, those are the people that are behind the proof and the science that our heart is our brain is our computer, and this computer that I'm interacting with is the interface. So for all the people at this point that are living from their hearts, we've got this 5D expansion going on. The people that are living in their brains are so confused because every system that they've ever known is now crumbling. And what I try to do as a holistic stylist is help alleviate suffering. So my journey over the years has always been talking with people, and I did professional education in my industry, so I'm comfortable, to speak to people, and I do have the facts and figures to back up what I say. So, like I said, you can worry about one or two things, and in this conversation, of course, we're going to work with the thesis and antithesis, which means two valid points equally true, and everybody has to decide what they believe, because really we are creating our reality. And of course, it's very important over these next 5 or 6 weeks that you're creating your reality properly, because it will manifest. So I have a wide variety of things on my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel is very new to people. Very few subscribers so far, but a lot of views. And so I've broken it down basically into the mind, body, spirit approach, because as the holistic stylist, I surely care more about things than, say, just someone's hair. And that's what's brought me here with you today. So I think I have some really good information. And one of the things, I guess, we're going to take a hot topic, maybe something that's a little lighter and fluffier, and then we're going to get into something deeper. So a lot of people have been asking, why is the topic of twin flames even relevant if it's so unattainable? And if we're going to look at it, like I said, I think we're going to work with the thesis, antithesis, synthesis program to show you this. So, you know, soulmates is a hot subject too. And if you check out things about twin flames on the internet, it almost seems like it's something out of reach. And what we do know about this subject, say, for example, would be the union with the beloved. So this is our creator God. And, you know, especially when we think of, say, the bridegroom or Rumi, it is a passionate, personal, one-on-one relationship with our creator. And so many people are stuck in their religion that this deity that they believe they know with no form, that you could never really interact with that, because of course we're not good enough, although we are made in the image. So we see a lot of duality, and here again, it's your life, but you have to make some decisions about what you believe. Maybe that's where I come in to help. Another idea under the thesis side is that the twin flame soulmate would actually truly be the other side of you. And so if you go back to the original creation story where God said, let there be light, or even if you just want to talk about the Big Bang Theory, whatever is cool with me, imagine a flame. And of course, at this creation, the flame is divided off into two, and thus the separation. So all of these lifetimes are in search of getting back to that other piece of yourself. And isn't that hard to do these days, because most of us are so wrapped up in false programs and beliefs that we're not sure why we believe. How do we really get to know ourselves? You know, it's also, I think, difficult when you put other people ahead of yourself. And so, not to sound like Susie selfish, but you must love yourself before you can love others. And in order to love yourself, you will get to know yourself. And on my YouTube channel, I have an extensive series on LifeCharting, but we'll get to that shortly. Last point about a twin flame. Imagine it more like this. The one person, the one half of the flame, would be incarnate in physical flesh, while the other half of the flame would be on the astral etheric realm. So that's why I say a lot of people get bummed out, because even if they think that they're with the person that's the love of their life, they hear so much that it's unattainable that I think it's created a lot of confusion for people. And surely until this last January. I'm going to say it was unattainable for 99% of the people, but there's always the 1%, isn't there? And so I guess part of my enjoyment is that through all these stories that I expose on my YouTube channel, we see that I am with the love of my life, my twin flame soulmate. And so people are asking me now to speak out about this. And that requires me telling my story, but we don't have time for that tonight. This is just an hour. We're going to see how it goes. Hopefully we get a following here and we can actually have some serious interaction on a variety of subjects. I'm open, have a lot of interest. So the antithesis, of course, would be about the truth and the freedom and finding yourself and loving yourself, because then everything on the thesis side is truly attainable. And like I said, we will go over Joe and I's story. And for those of you, that have heard what's up with the twin flames, they always have a relevant timeline of order and chaos. Sometimes a runner in the relationship. And fortunately, Joe and I have been best friends for over 25 years. So we've seen every type of union between us, from a simple friendship to a husband-wife relationship. Oh yeah, that's coming from the people that aren't married. So, here I am, a girl that wants to talk about the divine, but doesn't have a membership card to any particular religion. And people see us on the streets and say, hey, how's your husband doing? And I always have to, say, now, you sure you understand what that word means? But I am completely committed to him. And that's what's made this such a beautiful journey, because let's face it, there's a lot of beautiful people online. And some of my male friends have, kind of said, hey, man, what's up with you? And so I go through this story, and then they understand what it is. So I'll tell you what, here's the funnest part about my life with Joe, is yes, we have a lot of love between us, but that love filters out and affects the people around us. And that's how you have a shift of energy. So, isn't that pretty cool? But, the synthesis of this whole conversation is really just identifying soulmates, I believe. And, there's your basic soulmates. And of course, these aren't per se sexual relationships. I mean, they can be, surely, but usually not. They can be family members, they can be friends, they can be mentors and teachers. I mean, there's a million different things that would fall into a basic soulmate relationship. Any two people that care about each other are truly soulmates. Karmic soulmates are ones that come together to learn a huge lesson. So, for example, my ex and I would be karmic soulmates. And a lot of the time you have to ask yourself, I mean, if you were to have to learn a lesson and you had an option between it being someone you knew or an absolute stranger, you can surely see why you might not listen to a stranger and you might blow them off. So I think some of our hardest lessons in life we learn from the people that are actually the closest to us. Okay. Should we talk about disclosure first? Let's talk about all the nice things. So, I'm going to talk to you about my channel, and we're going to cover some of the topics that are on here. So we have mind, body, spirit connection is where I want to focus. And so I'm going to put this piece of paper up so you can see it and bring it up to the screen. And so you'll find on my YouTube channel, Suze Pratt, Rudolf Steiner Enters Our Lives, Healing Through LifeCharting, Initiations of Life Overview, Healing Through LifeCharting and Depth Analysis, And the Mother's Day message was Sue's. Rudolf Steiner was one of the most incredible minds of the 20th century in Germany. He was actually Austrian, and very few people in the States know who Steiner is. But I'll tell you what, when I read his work, my life changed. And of course, I had always been myself. But these books brought me to the real truth of facing the things that were in me that were hidden. And so I'm just holding up a couple of the books. Foundations of Esotericism. And this is a great one. Initiation, Eternity, and the Passing Moment. So Steiner talked a lot about what occurs between life and rebirth. And this thing that they call death is surely not death. And I think we're starting to come into that a little bit more now. But the life charting I do that you'll see on the Facebook, or on the YouTube, I'm sorry, would be the human life. Oh, by the way, I live in the most dangerous city in America, Ferguson, Missouri, so you might hear a lot of bells and whistles and sirens and false flags and maybe even some serious action while we're live. But I do love where I live, and I've lived here my whole life. Funny thing is, you know, here I am, a white girl that was blacklisted by several white folks and a token. So my town is dangerous, they say, and then my town turns around and says I'm dangerous. My whole life they've told me, don't talk, you'll get in trouble. And I was even mocked for not getting on the computer ever, so you can imagine how funny it was when they wanted me to set up my website here in town. And the gal that is behind the blacklisting, you know, the arch enemy in the professional industry, all that petty, nonsensical hairdressing stuff. I have dogs too. But anyhow, I'm typing in my stuff, guys. And she comes up and she's got her face. And she says, I didn't think you knew anything about computer. And I said, well, I'm not an imbecile. I just chose to not even go on it. And yes, I am alive. And so, you know, people come in and out. And I'm live streaming, guys. I'm live streaming. I'm on Google right now. Warren, close the door, would you really? So I guess this is what happens when you go live, huh? Gotta love life, though, don't you? I would rather be here doing this than not. And I hope, like I said, you guys are gentle with me. This is my maiden voyage. Best to do these things when nobody's home, I guess. Okay. As far as what you'll find about me on the Holistic Stylist, of course, I'm a board certified, nationally accredited hair colorist, and a lot of people can't imagine somebody with my skill being in North County in the ghetto. Well, if that's where I've lived and that's where I've grown up, why wouldn't I be here? I mean, we all really need to be happy with where we're at, because something's coming, and it's best to always be happy with the truth about who you are. I mean, I am no diva, guys, and you'll come to see that. But anyhow, I work with organic hair color and enzyme developers because, hey, even poor people deserve good hair color, don't they? And seriously, I mean, look what most people think about hairdressers, dime a dozen. Um, I was always the niche girl, a visionary, a pioneer in her field. And so now it's almost like, I mean, I love doing hair and I always will, but I have a new career and it is involved with this internet somehow. So we'll see how that plays out. But I do enjoy interacting with people. Um, One of the best things that you could really check out is magnesium therapy. And I use Dr. Shealy's. So you would find out about that on that YouTube. Another thing that I'm really into is blood type philosophy. So if we're all dealing with this great amount of stress these days, and we look for ways to alleviate that suffering, well, blood type philosophy is one of them. So, for example, I'm an A blood type, and we don't digest meat very well. So, when I checked out blood type, I was eating 6 out of 10 poisons. That was in my 30s. I'm 51 now. So, when I tell people, I don't eat meat anymore or drink alcohol or eat anything with eyes, and, I mean, I like to say it that way too. People go, well, why do you still smoke then? And I'm like, you know what? If I had 100 bad habits and I gave up 60 or 70 of them, why would you be judging me on the ones I keep? So we have to be able to go through life without feeling guilty for the choices we make. And they've said before that if you're walking down the road and you stub your toe and you call yourself an idiot for stubbing your toe, it'll hurt a lot more than if you just shake it off and say, you know what, I stubbed my toe, BFD. And I've found in life that that is true. We have a lot of spiritual phenomena, and I think that's what maybe is people's biggest interest in what I speak about. So instead of holding up paper, I guess at this point, let's get the phenomena and just talk about it. Okay, guys. So, phenomenon progress with Suze. That's a little short mini intro that you'll find on YouTube, and I was actually just making videos with the tablet. They're not the best quality. Sue's World of Manifest Phenomena. That gets into the whole thing of what happened in August because, my first day on the computer was the day before Mike Brown was slain. And didn't get on the computer to advertise my business. I got on the computer because I felt there was a mission. And so it's evolved from one thing to the next. And I'm telling you, every day of my life, I've been on the computer 6 or 7 hours. And I'm not messing around playing games and things like that. It's been the most incredible education. And you can't ask for more. Free access to the most brilliant minds in the universe. So I hope that we see a trend, and I know that they are seeing it actually, but I hope you're seeing it out there too. That maybe people are playing less of the games and spending less of the time on the dark side of the internet, and maybe they're getting an education that even if they would have paid 6 figures for it, they would have never learned it in traditional college. That is a phenomenon. But here's what happened to me when I left my old life and moved to this town. I'm going to show you this scarab that appeared when we got to this town. So what I'm saying to you is that little guy right there was not on that incense burner when we moved here. And for those of you that have researched scarabs, the meaning behind it is rejuvenation and everlasting life. So you understand now that really what we are is energy. and we choose to take form, and we've had so many different forms we don't know about. But here again, what an incredible thing it is to have this happen and to tell people. And then, say, for example, some clients I've known 30 years, and they know I don't play around, and they've witnessed these things. So it's nice that there's actually people that can accept this as truth and go beyond, like I said, what they think they know, and they have no damn clue why they think they know it. This next thing is pretty powerful too. And when it appeared, it looked nothing like this. And so it's cleaned itself. It's actually grown. It's a pretty incredible stone. A lot of people have a lot of ideas about it, and it would be one of those things that if I said it out loud, wow, maybe it'd put me in some kind of, super duper danger, but I don't really think so. I think that I'm protected, and I think that we're all protected at this point to where anybody wants to bring any harm, it's just going to do more harm to the person that does it. So if I have a message of hope to bring, which I do, I would hope that that might motivate people to have more faith and to know that we're loved. We're loved by an intelligent universe and an incredible creator. Oh, I wish I knew if there were people to talk to or if I'm just chatty Cathy as usual. Let's see what this says. Let's click out of that and say chat. I'm going to click on this. And so it doesn't look like anybody's here, and that's okay. It says I have one viewer out there. That's cool. Whoever it is, I appreciate that you're here. Next thing we're going to talk about is the disclosure aspect of what I have to bring. And so you might find the YouTube interesting. Love letters to Ferguson, Mike Brown, and me. And here again, if I've lived in this town my whole life, I have a story I think that is relevant besides what's on the YouTube. I don't know how many of you know about St. Louis, but East St. Louis is across the river. And when I was growing up, of course, East St. Louis is where you didn't want to be. And so I watched a great documentary about East St. Louis recently. And when it was first purchased, the corporations came in to buy up that low-lying swamp area because they knew nobody cared about it and it wouldn't be regulated. So they built their factories and put the train tracks in and started smelting and doing all the things they did. And the first wave of immigrants in were actually the Polish people. And so, and I'm not making a joke, of course, everybody likes to make Polish jokes, right? But, they worked these people so hard. And of course, there was the nice side of town, and East St. Louis actually looked like maybe RFD, like out of Andy Griffith at one point. But as these people were worked to death, they brought in the next wave, which was, of course, the emancipated slaves. So as that wave came in, there was a segregated area waiting for the new people. And this documentary was based on two kids that had grown up next to each other, of course, one being Caucasian and one being African American, and they were buddies, But what's a trip is that if you could imagine from East St. Louis, they would look across the river and see St. Louis on the hill, looking like it was the promised land or something. So when the migrations happened, if you know anything about St. Louis, south of Highway 40 was slavery. And then, of course, north of 40 was free. And, of course, North County is north of 40. So, thinking back on all this, I thought what was so interesting is that in 1974, there were 3 areas in St. Louis where I live that were segregated, and the area I grew up in was one of them. So, if East St. Louis, say, had serious racial tension after 1971, and then you watch the flow, and say the one group goes south and the one group goes north. Where I live here, everybody thinks it's black and white too. But I really wish people get over that. It's not. What it's really about is it's about socioeconomics, it's about bountiful resources, and it's about corporate takeover. So, I mean, really, here in this town, the people that have always lived here have get along great. But originally, it was so segregated that no one but Caucasians lived here. And so, one guy hosted a nice man, and that's how it all began. But I think at this point, like I said, it's so important that I disclose that truth, because what has actually happened to me, like I said, with blacklisting. I mean, to have a reputable businesswoman of 30 years blown out of the water for tip money and politics and 1% elitism in a small town in the Midwest. I mean, like I said in my love letters to Ferguson, if we can have peace on earth anywhere, we can have it here. And they say that St. Louis sits on this third cosmic ray, which is unconditional love. So I've been speaking from that platform for the last year, and what a great trip it's been. So another one of my really, I think, relevant to disclosure YouTubes is called War No More. And that was something I released on Memorial Day. Now, my grandfather, who I never knew anything about, he had passed when my mom was 8. And so, of course, I guess they were both heartbroken, and traumatized. And that's why I deal with a lot of life charting too, because I saw so much pain in my own family and with my friends and with myself, because I've been through a lot. That's another reason I think they need me to speak, because if you investigate these stories, you say, how did she survive, But if we all have a purpose, and somehow I was tuned into my purpose from a young age, well, that's why I've survived, and that's why I'm here to talk about it. And that's why I'm here to interact with you guys. And if I can be a help, then that's my service to mankind. But my grandpa was the managing editor of the Custer Combateer, and that was the paper that was coming back from the war. Say, so what, Well, my grandpa was able to get war secrets out, and he was an eloquent writer. So, say, in that series of letters, if I'm reading a letter between him and my grandmother, and it just so happens to speak some truth that he had experienced, say about the double talk and the rules that don't mean a thing. I mean, here was a man inducted that was technically too old to fight, And theoretically, he should have gone home because he had a child, but they saved him to the end because they needed him. And out of this infantry in World War II, it started out with 200 guys, and he was in the last 5% to go home. So I have this huge box of letters, love letters between them. And so as a child, if I only knew that he sent my grandma home jewelry and that he was a secretary and they called him an SOB, well, that doesn't give a girl much to go on. But as we go through life charting and we're trying to figure out why our lineage was so close-lipped, and then we remember that nothing is personal when these traumas happen, and we can draw a picture and figure out what's going on and then prove it with facts and figures and statistics. It does so much for the well-being of not only myself, but my children and my children's children, and then also, of course, the sins of the father going back. So I'm a strong believer, like I said, that we're connected in so many more ways than just what we understand in this 3D experience. Now, there is another side to that. And I'm not trying to bring this up to freak anybody out. But we have two schools of thought. So I'm in the school of thought that believes that we're going to ascend. This is going on current time. And we're going to be upgraded, stay human. There's also another side, of course, that would say by 2040. And I'm a great salesman, okay? Here's what I'd do. I'd say, hey, man, you're getting kind of old and rickety. Your body's wearing out. We can transfer your consciousness into this artificial life form here, and you'll never die. Hey, guess what, dudes? That's how they're going to steal souls. And I know that sounds wackadoo, but check out check out things more than just the simple stuff. And you know what? You will know if it resonates with you or not. And it's like in education, they used to say that if you learn even one thing when you go to a seminar, that you haven't wasted your time. So I would just ask anyone, don't believe anything everybody says, and don't believe everything I say. Don't mentally torture yourself like that. Take responsibility for your own torture. Go out there, learn for yourself, make your choices, and stick with them. But I can honestly, truly say that what I do speak is completely from my experience, and it is true to me. A lot of people would say, you got to believe your own story. And of course, I think that we've been dummied down so much that when you hear something like that, it automatically sounds like you're a liar. But the truth is that you're not a liar if you can say, I really believe my own story, I've lived it, and I can show it to you. So I guess the bottom line of that rant was that my mom never had one happy day in her life. And she said that was because her father didn't want a daughter, he wanted a son. But if I could look at war letters and it said that he would be happy with a daughter or a son, and even gave a list of girls' birth names first, why wouldn't I believe that person over the unhappy person who couldn't love herself, so she couldn't love anybody else? You see, that's why the journey. And that's why I guess I'm here at this point still to speak to you guys. One of my Facebook pages is called The Prophetic Destiny of Missouri. And that comes from a book called The Prophetic Destiny of the Nation. And they say that St. Louis here again is one of the 4 St. Louis cities slotted for revival. And outside of our home, we have a big revival banner. So sometimes people come and they knock on the door and they ask us, are we a church, or, what are we doing here? And we just explain that we're trying to help alleviate people's suffering. Come here for edification. Come here for help. And by no means is it a church. Is it a spiritual group of like-minded people? Yeah, it is. Okay, so a few more. Of course, we have the Night of the Fires, November 24th, 2014. And the building where the business was ransacked and chaos ensued everywhere. It wasn't burnt down, but the Little Caesars right by the house was set fire to. And of course, when this happened, you couldn't barely believe it, man. They're trying to tell us we have to evacuate. We're wetting everything down. The gazebo, the fence, the trees, the grass, all of it. And one of the firemen comes over and says, you need to get out of here. And we said, no, we're not. We're going to stay and go down with the property or whatever. And he says, well, we're just going to let it burn. And so Joe put his camera up and said, say it to the camera. And it's amazing how that fire got put out. Also got reignited in the middle of the night, too. So, of course, we were up all night. And, it's a little video snippet from that evening. Burning down the house is the one I just described. And then I have the prophetic star of Bethlehem Day News. So we're looking at about 30 YouTubes now, and each one of them is specific to topics. That's why I say I really need to get a good feel to understand who's interested in what. And then we can work a little deeper too, I think. Okay. Mind, body, spirit connection, holistic stylist, YouTubes, and conversation. So we talked about the scarab and the stone and the phenomena of the last year. But ancient symbols and cosmic language. Years ago, someone told me I knew what this symbol was. I guess we could be simple and go, hey, it's an A, or we could go, wow, that kind of looks like some kind of a glyph or a symbol. I mean, think what you will about this one, right? But more and more now we're finding out about these ancient languages. And this is definitely an interesting piece of paper I've always kept over the years. I had a multi-dimensional energy alignment. That's an interesting one. So what that is, of course, most people would say, well, you got ripped off or something because they weren't working on you right there. That's what some people believe. But when you do a multi-dimensional energy alignment, you see you're working and you're opening up a portal on the 5th dimension. So this is called distance healing. And of course, there's a lot of different, groups over the years that have totally worked very well with that. And the mind is like 30% placebo effect. I believe, and I know that I feel better, and I know what's going on personally. So here again, this YouTube that you would see on this would describe the first few days after that process. And I'm getting ready to make a second one of those. I just had another alignment this last week. As you know, we're on a big full moon. And if you follow this stuff, we've got about 5 more weeks of big action. And then, say theoretically, think colorful and creative, that each person would understand who they are at the most deep levels, like an activation grid or something. Can you imagine how could people do all the rotten stuff they do if they knew who they really truly were at heart? And, if they want to stay rotten, that's cool, because now that we understand, we have these different, each one of us have our own hologram, they say, of course, because we're the center of our experience and we all create our own reality. So, for the people that want war and bloodshed and trauma, it'll surely be that way for them, is what they say, what I believe. There's a real interesting one that you might want to check out. It's a webcam video from August 9th, 2015. And it's a pretty good story. I haven't told it yet. I'm going to check my time, and we'll see if we got time for this story. Excuse me. Okay. I'm back. I'm going to tell it. I think we've got about 10 more minutes. So, they had tried to get me a refurbished Dell, and it kept freezing up. People tried to get it up and running and logged in and all these things that I have no clue about. And everybody had the same problem. It would freeze up. So Joe's daughter came to work on it. She got one step farther than anybody else did. And the screen comes up and she says, well, Suze, what do you want on there? And I said, I want my YouTube channel so I can take this laptop and do YouTubes, because upstairs would be the area where I create hair color and the area where I do energy work and healing work on people. So 2 other great rooms except for the front room here. And she was setting it all up, checking the sound, the lighting, things like that. And she hit the on button. And then, of course, she turned it off. And we were sitting there on the couch next to each other. And all of a sudden, the light to the camera was back on. And she didn't touch it, and I didn't touch it. And when it was a 9-second video, and when it got done, I don't know how I knew this, but I said, that thing just went to YouTube. And she goes, no, it didn't. It can't do that. And I said, yeah, it did. So anyhow, the version that you'll see on my YouTube channel, I'll give you a clue and you'll have to work for this. The one person that's out there, there's a code on one of my private pages that's not on the link at YouTube. And it was a universal time where it was actually August 8th when she worked on this computer that's now gone back to wherever it came from. And, I think that's interesting, because usually things aren't on universal time and they just don't turn on and turn off and break down. So if you want to see the real one, you go to my page, Awakening to Rudolph Steiner, and you'll see it. See what I'm talking about. One of my more interesting 3-part series too is Healing Through Dreamscapes. And in the first episode, I'd be relating the dream I had continually. And I was a lucid dreamer, so it was very easy for me to be tortured for hours and manipulate dreams and hide. The bad guys were always coming to get me. They were just going to give me a little shot, put me down, kill me. It wouldn't hurt, whatever. I ran and hid. But interesting how I felt that same way about the computer. I thought it was all bad. But here again, what came to get me is benevolent and good. So I really can't be scared, but I understand how I was terrified as a child, right? And then part 2 is more about past life interest. And part 3 is about an implant that I removed. And so that really gets kind of weird again. But as a child, I had a dream that there was a little white worm that would come out of the center of me, and I'd try to get it out and it'd go back in. And then here, years later, I actually pull something out of me, and I'm sure that anybody that runs into this has probably heard about implants. There's ones that are put in by humans. There's ones that are put in by astral forces, and they're very hard to remove. And this one was hard to remove. So many things you'll see on YouTube. And I hope that some of this, any of it, was interesting. Like I said, I'm trying to get the word out there and make myself known, but not known to the wrong people, right? So we're winding down on time. I have a couple things left. And I know this one's going to be tough, guys, but if you need any help, or if you're worried about the spyware with Windows 10, I'm going to bring this up so you can write that link down. And you see it's a very scary title. From Your Computer to Satan's Server. Now, I watched this, and I'd say there's probably 20 different prompts that you have to go through to disconnect everything. But I've named my new laptop Sophia. But I'll tell you what, from what they say, Cortana is Lilith. And I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but I just speak what I believe. And either I know one of two things, and that is that we will be sovereign and free and responsible, or everything that we're all putting into this is going to go into some artificial intelligence, and they won't need humans anymore. So we all are out there trying to do the right thing at this point. Something else, one last thing before I sign off for the night. I'm a big studier, like I said, so I had already known about Jonas Salk's book, Outbreak, which has all the proof and verification you'd ever need to know about the poisoning of vaccines and how they really bring on a lot more disease and suffering and death than what the average person knows. And now that they're getting ready to try to make vaccinations mandatory, it's probably best that you check into this. And you know what? If you have to pull your kid out of school, so what? If you have to stand your ground and fight, so what? I can't, and I won't. And I'll tell you this. I've never been terribly ill, neither of my children. And of course, I claim the religious exemptions, except for the basics. And wow, here's evidence back to the 1700s, okay? So if you go over to The Order of the Black Sun with Michael Tessarian. And you can see the name of the channel there. It's Morph314. Here's your, if you go into 39 minutes in, you'll find the poisoning methodology from Coca-Cola to vaccines. Man, when I was young, I used to drink a lot of Pepsi too. And you know, back to that blood type living, none of this is to be judged, whether it's the foods you eat, the things you drink, the body care products you use, or the thoughts that you think. 2 out of 10 can be poison, is what they say, and you can stay healthy and you can stay balanced. So, with that, guys, I'm so glad we had this time together, and I'm signing out and saying peace, love, and light from the Big Yellow House, 3rd Cosmic Ray, St. Louis, Missouri. Hope to see you out there with Mr. Computer Head and Sophia. Good night.